So how did you get into, I guess, creating your own manga? You're not a Japanese person, not overly, not part of that culture. You're here in America. Why is that the medium that you chose to go down the path with, and how did you get there?
Well, I was raised on Western comics, but I had the obscure luxury growing up of every one of my family members being military people. So we would get things back from like Germany and Japan being the dominant places because they were mostly Marines. They were almost all stationed in one or the other. We didn't get stuff from Korea or Guam. It was always Japan or Germany. So I would get like weird Disney comics in German they just looked strange. They weren't even fun to look at. They were just awful. But I would get these, Dragon Ball Z like bootleg VHS tapes occasionally, or like they would bring back just weird toys and weird comics. You know how Japan is; they love their monsters and all that kinds of stuff. So they're usually grabbing like really cheap stuff, but it gave me just a little taste of Japanese entertainment at a young age. And by the time the mid '90s, it was finally starting to get easier to get a hold of. Not so much manga, but at least like anime was becoming commonplace at mall video stores, and cable was running a lot more of that kind of stuff. So it had a big influence on me, despite the fact that I grew up with Western comics. Because I love superhero comics, I love DC comics. I did. I don't so much these days, but at one point in my life, that was the universe. I loved the fatherly DC universe of characters, and I loved the X-Men and Spider-Man and all your typical Marvel stuff too, and some indie stuff. But when I was growing up, I was a little too young to really for that to catch my eye the same way as all these colorful Marvel and DC books on a shelf. But as I got older and I put in the desk hours of drawing comics and being like, this is all I plan on doing with myself in life, inevitably you get bored and you get tired of what you're looking at too. You start to revert back to other things you remember being cool. And eventually I started to revert back to anime and manga and be like, you love that stuff your whole life. You phased out of it for maybe like 6 years. Just go back and try to get back into that. You're getting bored with just picture of Batman standing. It's great when you're like a learning artist and you're growing up and you're trying to get better with anatomy, but it's like I've already seen it for like 30 years. I'm tired of it now. So what I did was I just kind of drew inspiration from all the stuff I liked, whether it was Akira or Berserk or X-Men or the more wholesome DC kind of era stuff, and kind of work that all into one comic book of the story I've been wanting to tell forever, but I couldn't because the things I wanted to use for it were all owned by somebody else. So eventually I was like, you just have to find a way to tell the story using all your own characters. And it's not like I was foreign to using my own characters. I just already had like an idea in my head. So once I snapped out of that and got it together, I started working on Death, Death, Death prior to it having a name, probably in 2014, 15. I really started to lay the groundwork for it and do design work and things like that. And eventually when it got to the point where I had like a good enough idea of the story to go ahead and start drawing artwork, I probably worked on it for about a year in between like paid gigs. And that allowed me to, when I did the Indiegogo campaign, to at least be a little ahead. Like I'm still, a little late right now, but it's also it's a 300-page book. I draw it, I color it, I letter it. The only thing I don't do is 100% of the editing, because that wouldn't make sense. Like the whole point of an editor, someone else reads it. So
it's the eyes. When your eyes are used to looking at something, like they're used to it and they don't notice anything.
You're 100% correct, man. Like I've got 3 editors that have each been doing run throughs on like 50-page chunks at a time, and we all keep missing little things. It's your brain starts to read and it fills in those gaps, even if a word's not there. and it's difficult because even the best of the best miss some stuff, and it's like I don't mind like a few little things here and there. Like no one's going to notice like 2 or 3 grammar errors in the entire book unless they're just really anal retentive about that stuff. But
Well, I'm into copywriting. That's one of my interests, and I still send my copy to other people to look at because, like, one of our things we're always harping on is, you want to give the benefit, not the feature, and following that logically, like your brain does jump. So like you feel like you're giving a benefit, but if you keep following, like, but no, that's not really what the benefit is. That's still a feature, and this is really the benefit that thing's giving. But your brain just automatically does the jump, and like makes you think it's the thing because it's just doing the work for you and doesn't want you to waste the energy getting there. It's wild how it works like that.
well, it is because we know it's going to happen, but we can't necessarily control it in the midst of it, especially when you get settled in and you start working. You know what I mean? It's like you get a flow, and I think when people are in the zone or they get a flow going, it's almost easier to miss something because you're enjoying your work, you're moving good, you feel the progress being made. So it's one of those things where I that's one of my biggest regrets is I didn't equate editing time and the fulfillment time. Like in my head, because I've been drawing comics and commercial art and a bunch of stuff like that, graphic design, since like 2002. So my whole life has been you draw a page, either pencil or ink or color or whatever, then you hand pages in and you move on with your life. Once you do your gig and you get paid, then it's on to the next thing. You got to make money. And that's how my brain thought.
This would being the boss is its own thing, huh? Where you're the guy who's the next step too.
Yeah. And honestly, like me and my business partner, Shane Mess, at King Toad, our studio, we both ran like comic book shops we used to own, stuff like that. We tried other endeavors in between of trying to reach our creative goals. Like, well, that's still a big part of being involved. Let's open stores, things like that. But so I was kind of used to some of it there, but the catch was like, I just did not equate the time it takes to read and reread and read and reread and fix errors and do corrections and keep sifting through these. Like I even have to break the files down into like smaller chunks of pages. Like if I open up my drive to like the folder that just says death, I just see like hundreds of pages and I'm like, good Lord, I'm gonna have to, I gotta simplify this. I gotta make this easier to attack because like it's just it's overwhelming even though I did it to myself. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I made the call to do it this way.